When we think of the medieval period, our minds are often filled with the stories of kings, the mighty rulers, the brave knights, the famous battles. Yet behind the stories of the men lies a more complex and often more powerful truth. The history of England was not solely written by kings, it was also shaped by the women they married. These were the queens of medieval England. They were daughters, wives, and mothers, but their roles were anything but simple. They were the most powerful women in the realm, expected to provide heirs and act as a model of piety and virtue. But many transcended these expectations, becoming formidable figures in their own right. They commanded armies, negotiated treaties, acted as regents, and wielded influence that could only change the course of history. Their power was often informal, their voices sometimes silenced, but their impact was undeniable. I am Dr. Amy Boyington, and this is the story of 6 of those medieval queens. Their lives proved that the power behind the throne could, at times, be greater than the power upon it. Our journey begins with a woman who fought not just to be queen, but to be a reigning queen in her own right. The story of Empress Matilda. Born a princess, Matilda's life was a grand tapestry of dynastic alliances and brutal betrayal. As a child, she was married to the Holy Roman Emperor, becoming empress of a vast European realm. But her brother's death left her as the only surviving legitimate child of King Henry I of England, and her father made her swear a solemn oath to become his heir. The throne, however, was snatched from her upon her father's death by her cousin, Stephen of Blois. For nearly 2 decades, England was plunged into a brutal civil war, a period so chaotic it became known as the Anarchy. Matilda was a strategic and tenacious warrior, leading her forces from the front. She outmaneuvered Stephen's armies and for a brief shining moment was even proclaimed Lady of the English in London. She may have ultimately failed to take the throne for herself, but she never gave up. Her relentless fight ensured her son, the future Henry II, would ultimately inherit the crown. Matilda's legacy is not just in her failure to become queen regnant, but in her unwavering defiance of a system that believed a woman could not rule. She proved them all wrong. She was a king in all but name, and the first woman to make a credible and nearly successful bid for the English throne. Next, we turn to a queen whose life seems more like a legend than a historical fact. Eleanor of Aquitaine or Aquitaine. Born in 1122, she was not merely a queen consort, she was one of the most powerful women in Europe. As the Duchess of Aquitaine, she ruled over a vast territory in her own right, wealthier and more cultured even than the King of France. Her court was the centre of a cultural renaissance, where troubadours sang of chivalry and courtly love, ideas that she championed herself. Her life, though, was one of political upheaval. She firstly married King Louis VII of France, an incompatible union that produced 2 daughters. She accompanied him on the Second Crusade, where her presence and influence caused a scandal in the Holy Land. How dare a woman go there? But after a dramatic annulment, she shocked Europe by marrying the young Duke of Normandy, Henry Plantagenet. Just 2 years later, he became King Henry II of England. Eleanor brought to the English crown not only her lands, but also her fierce intelligence and diplomatic skill. She was a constant political partner to Henry, even acting as regent when he was abroad. But Eleanor was no weak consort. She famously led her sons in a rebellion against their own father, a bold move that resulted in her imprisonment for 16 years. Yet even in confinement, her influence remained. And upon Henry's death, she was released by her son, Richard the Lionheart, and her political savvy was more critical than ever. She travelled across Europe, negotiating treaties, raising armies, and even ransoming her beloved son from imprisonment. Eleanor of Aquitaine was a queen who refused to be confined by her title, and who shaped the destiny of 2 of Europe's most powerful nations. In stark contrast to the warring queens who came before her, our next subject is known for her grace, loyalty, and deep partnership with her husband. Eleanor of Castile was a woman of culture and compassion who became one of the most beloved queens in English history. Married to the future Edward I, she was his constant companion and most trusted advisor. Their bond was exceptionally strong for a royal couple, and their political partnership was as powerful as their personal one. Eleanor travelled with Edward on his crusades, and it's said she even saved his life by sucking poison from a wound. Her influence on him was profound. She was a shrewd businesswoman and an astute patron of the arts, literature, and architecture. Her land acquisitions were so extensive, she built a financial empire of her own, funding her patronage and supporting her husband's military campaigns. And when she died in 1290, a grief-stricken Edward I had 12 magnificent stone crosses erected at each of her funeral procession's resting places, a testament to the profound love for his queen. These Eleanor crosses, with their intricate carvings and elegant design, still stand today as a memorial to a woman who was a true partner in both power and love. Eleanor of Castile shows us that a queen's influence could be built not on conflict, but on a foundation of trust and respect. Few queens were as universally loved as Philippa of Hainault. Married to King Edward III, she was the epitome of a dutiful and popular queen. She was known for her kindness, her diplomatic skill, and her calm temperament. Philippa's primary role was to provide heirs, and she was very successful. She was a mother to 14 children, securing the succession of the Plantagenet dynasty for generations to come. Yet her influence extended beyond the nursery. She acted as regent for her husband on multiple occasions, most famously during the Battle of Neville's Cross, where she personally rallied the English troops to victory against a Scottish invasion. She was a passionate patron of the arts and was known for her charity. Her legacy is perhaps most visible in her patronage of Queen's College, Oxford, which she helped to found. Her compassion extended to the common people, and she was beloved for her intervention with her husband, convincing him to pardon the men of Calais after a long siege. Philippa was a queen who used her power for mercy, and in doing so won the hearts of her people and a lasting place in history. Our next queen story is a darker one, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and a woman who went from a powerless wife to a formidable ruler. Meet Isabella of France, a queen who earned the moniker the She-Wolf of France, and I've actually done a more extensive video on her, so look out for that. Born in the late 13th century, she was married at a young age to King Edward II of England. Their marriage, though, was an absolute disaster, marked by Edward's open favouritism towards his male courtiers and his blatant disregard for Isabella, who found herself politically isolated and constantly humiliated. Neglected and deprived of her rightful authority, Isabella's political influence waned until she was sent to France on a diplomatic mission. There, she did the unthinkable. She began an affair with the exiled English nobleman Roger Mortimer, and together they launched an invasion to depose her own husband. The invasion was a stunning success. Edward II was captured and soon after died under mysterious circumstances. Isabella and Mortimer became the de facto rulers of England, ruling in the name of her son, a move that really shocked the European courts. For several years, Isabella, as Queen Regent, held the reins of power. But her reign with Mortimer was short-lived because her son, Edward III, eventually grew tired of their power and, in a dramatic coup, seized control of the throne. Isabella was forced to retire from public life. A queen who had wielded ultimate power now had it taken away from her. In the 15th century, during the bloody dynastic conflict known as the Wars of the Roses, one woman stood out as a beacon of fierce loyalty and relentless courage. This was Margaret of Anjou, the wife of the weak and mentally unstable King Henry VI. When her husband's throne was threatened by the House of York, Margaret refused to cede power. While her husband was incapacitated by a mental breakdown, she became the de facto leader of the Lancastrian cause. She did not merely stand by and watch the conflict, she actively participated in it. She travelled across England, rallying troops, raising armies, and leading her forces into battle against the Yorkists. She was a brilliant military strategist and a formidable political force, earning the respect and fear of her enemies. She battled the powerful Richard, Duke of York, and at times even defeated his forces. Her determination in the face of overwhelming odds was legendary, but her efforts were ultimately for naught. Despite her extraordinary efforts, the Lancastrian cause ultimately failed, and she was eventually captured and ransomed by the French king. Margaret of Anjou remains a symbol of defiance and a testament to the fact that queens were not passive bystanders in medieval warfare. These stories of these 6 amazing women reveal a hidden history of female power. They were queens who defied expectations, who leveraged their wealth and influence, and who fought for their families and their crowns. They were not just the wives of kings, they were essential actors in the great Game of Thrones. Their lives remind us that the history of England was not solely written by men, but also by the extraordinary women who ruled alongside them, and sometimes even in their place. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you've enjoyed it. So please do like, share, and subscribe for more. Thank you.